Yep, I can see that.
Yeah, so I probably just wanted to, I know this is like a community of water researchers, but I just wanted to touch base and see what was their primary motivation to engage in research associated with water. And so I reached out to some of the childhood memories I had with water, right? So some of the childhood memories that I had with water growing up in India was with like these really nice beaches, a lot of really nice sand. If you go up there early in the morning, there's like it's just the ocean, the sands, and yourself. So it was like a really cool spot to like sit down and meditate, or like just take a walk, or just relax and that kind of stuff. Um, there's also very so rivers have long been the cradles of human civilization, right? And so the rivers are they occupy a very interesting space in culture, culture and religion. And so growing up, there was always that influence between those two, primarily associated with water. And so rivers were more like the giver of life, is what we would term them in the local parlance. And then there was also culturally fun things to do in terms of like boat races. So you got these like really long boats where you'd pack a bunch of rowers in them, and there'd be a drum beat, and you would race them to see which one overtook which one. And so this is like from the southern part of the country. And so this is like a really, really famous festival that goes on every year. And so these were some of my initial images in terms of like what water means and why it occupies an important space, both in my head and my heart, and what's some of the research that's driving the motivation behind this space. So I just wanted to share that and then see what the other folks had to say, and then share a little bit of the research that we do currently, which is more technical, but I just wanted to, more so in an unconference session, I kind of wanted to just see what folks' motivation was for going into the water realm.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love it just seems so poetic, the connection that you have to it, and what it means to you.
Yeah.
I think this could be a really, really powerful conversation. So I hope that we get some people to join.
Okay, we'll just hang around for a little bit and see how it goes, and then we go from there.
Yeah. So you said you're from the southern part of India?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, Matt.
Hey guys, how we doing?
We're doing well. How are you?
Good. Is Shuliang still in here?
It looks like he just dropped off. So hopefully he's going to the right place now.
Are you guys chasing each other?
I don't know. I'm really sorry, Piran. I don't know what's going on with all that. But are you in the middle of your presentation?
No, actually, I think this is my starting slide. So we have a few more slides, but I'll just hang around and see if there are more folks showing up before I run through it.
Okay. I'll stay. I'll be here.
Don't worry.
Yeah, Matt, I think you would actually really love this topic.
Well,
he just gave me background. So
I already like the pictures. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to just reach out to some of the researchers in the water space and like ask them what was their view of water, how that shaped their research, and what got them interested in the water space, right? And so this is a question I kind of ask myself quite a lot. And growing back up in India, we had these really nice coastlines that my granddad would take us to, and we walk along and have conversations along like early in the morning sometimes. And then rivers are also known as the cradle of human civilization, right? So they occupy a very rich space and canvas in the cultural and religious context as well. And then the third one is more can also be a source of great entertainment and fun, and each part of the world then has its own source of fun in terms of like this is a traditional boat race that we have in India where you have these long boats with like almost 100 people with oars, and they race against each other to a certain tune of drum beats and stuff. And so broadly, my motivation to be in the water space is to be able to preserve this ecosystem as it was even 30 years ago. The deterioration in the ecosystem has been quite remarkable, and every year I go back, it's something more has changed, and I'm not super convinced that the change is in the positive direction. And the same thing holds true for many other water ecosystems around the world, including the United States to a large extent, right? And so that was really the motivation for me to get into the water space. So these are just and I just wanted to understand and network with other researchers to see what their connection with water actually was, not just from a pure scientific level. Sure, from a scientific level, yes, we do single atom thick membranes for water and a whole host of other separations. That's a separate conversation, but like, but more so, you know, what was the key reason folks got interested in water?
You know, it's interesting because I think, did you get to sit on into the Women in Water panel yesterday by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that some of those, like I remember I don't remember everybody's name, but I know the woman from Zambia who, I want to say Zambia or Zamibia. I can't remember which country, but she said that she had kind of developed the same passion around this like you had, from where she grew up and how water was treated and used there, kind of developed her passion for it, right? So on this, so the one on the picture on, I guess, the beach picture, where is that in India?
So this one's close to Goa. It's on the west coast. Yeah, so this one's close to Goa. It's like on the west coast. So the west coast has an interesting geographical location, right? So you have the coast, and you have a little bit of you then have a mountain range that basically goes along the coast. So you get this really nice topographical contrast where you have mountains and you have the sea. Okay.
Is this where you were talking about walking with your dad?
So not exactly this place, but close to this, also down south. So I come from a small village down on the east coast of India. Okay.
What's the largest city down in that part that like, is it, because I know that, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be Chennai, would be the largest. Chennai or Madras, as it was called before. So, yeah,
because I've been to India once. I've been to Delhi, right? And it was what was always, I mean, the vastness of India was, you know, more than I anticipated when I went there, right?
Sure.
And then I think realizing, like, to fly from Delhi to Chennai, it's no different than flying from like here to DC, right? And you think it might just be I don't know, an hour, and it's not, because it's a big country, and you don't think of it. So I was always curious where that was.
Sure.
So, you know, one of the it's an interesting question. So what water means to you and where does it come from? So it's obvious from your perspective, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did when I was doing my chemie degree was in our capstone project, there was a desal plant. So it's back in 95, right? So you're looking back, you know, gosh, a long time ago, we'll just put it that way. And they had a desal plant that was like a pilot, right? And it was because I went to UC San Diego, all right? And this was inland a little bit. And they had a very interesting setup for doing this. And they used a lot of terms that I never understood, okay? Like they had a sand settling system, right? Then they had a plant-based system to change the biological oxygen demand. So they used and I can't remember what it was an exotic plant, but growing in the water to change the BOD, and then to go into the desal system that they had, right, which was not big. I mean, if you look at something like the Poseidon plant now out in California, or some of the ones that are in the Middle East, I mean, these are massive desal facilities. This was probably, I don't know, maybe they had 2 pumps, right? 2 high pressure pumps going in, and then a carbon system on the back end for polishing, right? But you could go in there, right, and you could open the tap after the polishing system and have a glass of water, right?
Oh, nice.
And so for me, that's where I got it, right? Now, I've always been on the coast growing up in California, like you said, right? So I was in California when I grew up. I think I took it for granted more than anything else. I don't think I understood, right? You just see water flowing by, but you don't understand what goes into making. And so I went through, and I went into, right, my first job after school was at a membrane company, but it wasn't desal, it was gas separation, right? Now the principles are similar, okay?
Right.
And you're dealing with compressing a gas, which happens, well, you can argue back and forth of whether it's easy to compress a liquid or a gas, because it depends on the gas, right? But that's how I kind of got it. And when NAWI came about and we were thinking about what do we do, I think perspectives were very interesting on the team. You had folks that were very deeply engaged with water from the commercial side, like Peter, right? Peter had run a startup that had some mixing systems that would go into large tanks, really cool technology, all right?
Gotcha.
You had Megan, who had done a lot of analysis on different aspects of efficiency and cost for water systems, right? Not necessarily focused on industry. Then you had the AMO interest, which was around industrial wastewater, right? And then you had this thing of how does desal and the challenges faced in desal improve all this? And that's kind of how we developed this thing around our challenge areas, well, maybe if we can target a single species in a precise fashion, we can improve the efficiency of the processes. We can make a high pressure membrane. We can operate these processes on renewable energy, okay? And kind of driving, and then we could actually take brine and do something with it, right? Get it to ZLD, right? And so that's kind of where the passion was, but I don't know if it was as personal maybe as it was for you in what you saw growing up, right? But I think there's a lot of people who have similar experiences to you.
That's very interesting, and I think that's very nice to hear. I mean, so yeah, you're saying, yeah, I think from a pedagogical point of view, I like to see where people pick up interests for research, right? And I think it's very interesting to hear your story where you're saying, hey, it was that one instance where I could go into this plant and just open the tap up and have it, and that really made everything come together, right? So the mental picture was then complete. So for me, this is interesting because I then flip it around and look at it from a teaching perspective, right? Or when students get interested in research. So what kind of experiences would then move them to research in this area, right? So that's kind of where I was trying to perhaps look at this from, right? Not just my personal experiences, but also then hear from what the community had to say. And now you bring up these interesting things. So you are correct, right? I mean, not a lot of students actually really go into one of these plants to actually see how these things operate, And I think that might be something we should maybe do more, like school excursion trips to like water purification or wastewater treatment plants, or something like that might be very interesting for the curriculum too.
One of the things that Peter talked about it yesterday, okay, that he's so passionate about that aspect of it that if you don't see it, it's hard. I mean, it becomes calculations, or it becomes running it on like a little a coin cell, right?
Mhm.
And like it's, what I in my membrane, when I was working at membrane technology and research, I got to do a lot of pilot testing. So,
Okay.
it's not water, okay, but I went down and I ran systems, they were, pilot scale. So you're looking at, I don't know, 1/100th scale of a real system, right? But you go to a plant, like in some cases it was a natural gas plant, okay? And your system is integrated into their operations. And what they're doing is giving you a slipstream, and you're then taking it and trying to make sure that your membrane operates the way you said it would.
Mhm.
And like, as a membrane researcher at the time, that opened up a lot of things. Like I remember having conversations with plant operators who would say, they're like, but we'd have this system that was all instrumented and had a bunch of flow meters and all this stuff on it. And they'd look at me and go, what is that spaceship you got out there? Because, they don't have that kind of stuff in the plant, right? And you could have a conversation with a real person about what their experience was like. They'd say, oh yeah, well, this existing system we have, here's the issues that we have. If it's a water system, well, it doesn't get everything out, it foams a lot, it does these kind of things, right? If you could have a system that addressed those needs, that would really fix what I have, right? And those discussions about going to plants, seeing things, talking to the people that are there are super enlightening. And I think as you're talking about having, your research students or attracting grad students who want to come to Vandy, right, and do work in this space, adding that in would be great. I mean, there is, like, for example, there is a water treatment plant that I've been to, and just outside of Atlanta, that Southern Company runs, focused on water treatment for power plants. And it's one of their larger plants that they have, but they have an ability to like run different systems on a pilot scale there.
I see.
All right. And so that's close to you. As a matter of fact, I think my flight when I was going there got diverted to Nashville for whatever reason, and I drove. So it took me about 4 hours. Okay. I know that. All right.
So that's super cool input. So I should make a note of this and maybe like take some of them there.
Well, yeah, and there's a person from Southern Company who's in the Alliance. All right, her name is Rebecca Austin, and she actually manages that facility. All right, and I just talked to her, or she works at that facility. I was just talking to her in one of the other sessions.
Okay.
So she's a great one to connect about giving your students that experience.
Sure.
There's obviously, you get into the desert Southwest, there's a facility just outside of where New Mexico State is in Las Cruces that focuses on brine desalination, okay, brackish brine water. And then there's another facility in El Paso, and Peter talked about wanting to get out there and see all that stuff. So there are opportunities to do this. And I would also say that, have you ever had any time to talk to Peter Fisk?
No, I should. I really should.
He loves this stuff, right?
Okay.
And he would say that, he's passionate about getting folks, if you don't see, you don't know. That's kind of his thing, right? And so getting those folks in your grads program, like your students, to go and see this stuff. Get them involved with the next gen program if you have some, right? You have some students that want to do it. Get them involved with that next gen program, because they will meet other people and see other things, and maybe the next gens take a trip somewhere that helps you get your students involved in that as well, and it helps complete that circle a little bit.
Yeah, this is an excellent idea. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, man. That's what I'm looking at these beach pictures, and I'm staring outside, seeing if the snow's gonna come today, and I'm like, I want to be at the beach. So, so tell me, how long have you been at Vandy, Piran?
So I've been here almost 4 years now.
Okay. Do you know the tech transfer office at all?
Yes, I do.
So do you know Chris Harris?
I don't know Chris Harris in that office.
Okay. So he's the director of licensing for Vanderbilt's tech transfer. He is a good buddy of mine, used to be at NROL.
Okay.
So if you get a chance to talk to Chris, he won't have anything good to say about me, but he is a fabulous resource on the tech transfer side, particularly when you're looking at stuff like, I know that there's a very large portfolio of medical based stuff comes out of the med school at Vandy, right? But
Right.
he's on the non-medical side, right?
Okay.
And so he's a physicist. He worked in the national labs. He spent time at UVA before. But you know, if you want an introduction, I'm happy to give it to you. But he's awesome. You'll really enjoy working with him. I've actually come and visited him and his family many times. Him and when he was at NREL, his family and my family got to be pretty close. Our kids are not that far apart in age. So I've been to Nashville probably 8 times because of Chris. And I love Nashville.
All right. You guys are really good buddies then.
Yeah, we are. I mean, as much as we can be, being a distance, right? But yeah, he's great on the tech transfer side. And to the extent that you guys come up with innovation in this space, you know, you've also got Oak Ridge, you know, 4-hour drive away.
Yeah.
You know, there's, do you know, have you met Yaron Polsky at Oak Ridge?
I haven't met Yaron Polsky, but we work a lot with the CNMS folks.
Yep. Okay.
So the Center for Nanophase Material Sciences.
Yeah. Well, Yaron is on the water side with us. So he manages the PI&I side. So he might be a good connection to have as well as you guys look to expanding your research team and having places for your water researchers to go. Sure.
While you're at it, Matt, I actually wanted to a couple of quick things, right? So we came out with this, well, we think it's interesting, but it's always nice to know how the research community perceives it, right? So in our research, what we typically do is we're trying to make single atom thick membranes, right? And so the goal is we take graphene or other 2-dimensional materials, essentially 1 to 3 atoms thick. And basically, we're looking at membranes for a lot of things. So, you know, whether it's electron transparent windows or, you know, separating isotopes of hydrogen and deuterium or making just atomically thin barriers, right? So these are all interesting things that we're interested in exploring. But what we really think is, you know, if we can take these single atom thick layers and poke holes that are just the right size, then we might get molecular sieving through them. And so we're basically at this point where we've now just about started to demonstrate single atom thick graphene membranes for desalination, right? Now, obviously, you know, this is what we are. This is where we are in terms of performance, right? So in terms of LMH per bar and salt rejection, we're around about here. And thin film composite membranes are around about here, and then graphene oxide membranes and the other 2-dimensional flake membranes are based out here. Now, you know, there's obviously an interesting conversation to be had, you know, in terms of you know, what level of rejection is adequate, and is rejection more important versus permeability, and you know, that's always an
age-old question.
Yes. That's like you know, it's a traditional question to ask, but I mean, it takes a while, right? I mean, conventional desal tech didn't just bolt out of the door yesterday, and it's not like it's industry standard today. It had its own speed runway. It still had its own path of development. It had you know, hundreds of thousands of experts working on it for a good 20, 30 years, right? And significant amounts of investments, right? So in terms of materials innovation, I guess broadly, you know, there are times I ask myself, in the context of existing thermodynamics and the other stuff, you know, materials innovation, okay, maybe flux does not matter that much, maybe, but that's because we're still imagining existing desal plants to be the way they have been for a while, right? In some sense, is there going to be a Tesla moment for desal?
Well, I think if you listen, and if I listen to the community of people in NAWI, right, there are always technologies that people look at as these zombies. All right, they're the things that keep coming out, right? Even though they're dead, they come back, right? And I don't say that I'm in a position to make those statements from an academic perspective. I haven't done the work to do it, but I know that there's people who feel very strongly about those things, right? What I tend to draw back on is I think there's more space for innovation than isn't. Okay. Anytime you get a technology that's entrenched with a typical membrane process and a typical material, there's always opportunity for improvement, right? I think the industry really understands a spiral wound element. So from that perspective, the polymer membranes work really nicely because they work really well in that frame, right? So, okay, let's say that maybe that's an industrial accepted technology. There are other ways to look at this problem. One of them, and what, like if I think about the ability to tailor a pore size precise using nanomaterials and kind of carbon stuff that you're looking at, what do you want to remove out of something, right? If you could pass, let's say you have a brine stream, okay? Brine stream has, like one of the things that I'm really interested in at NREL is if a brine stream has a critical mineral in it, lithium or something like that, if you could tailor a device to precisely remove lithium so that lithium could be used in batteries, that's an incredible resource right there. And there's a gazillion other salts that you could say the same thing about for, right? But what you're talking about is that precise ability to remove. Now people look at they look at catalysts, they look at absorbents, they look at other things to be able to do this stuff. And there's a lot of technology that has worked, right? So what can these the materials that you're talking about really make a space in that area? I mean, I can't imagine the kind of graphene materials that you're looking at, if you scale them up, being in a traditional, sorry, I just have to, I'm sorry. I'm still running the conference on the back end, so I get texts every once in a while. But how would you put that in a system, right? Could you take them, mount them on or make them on a flexible substrate so that you'd be able to roll them up? Or is it something where you'd have to look at making nanotubes of those materials? Or would it be something of, we're going to do a plate and frame module that people haven't really ever talked about much, or should say haven't ever really demonstrated more than doing some calculations and demos on it. So how does that work, and how does your research kind of address those problems? Because I tend to think that specialized materials like what you're talking about are better for precise separations than they are for bulk separation. Would you agree with that, or do you not agree with that statement?
No, I think so. And I think that's kind of where we started out. So when we started out initially, we decided to initially go out in the dialysis space.
Okay.
Right. And so we decided to pick an application that would be cost agnostic.
Okay.
Right. And so what we see is, because these materials are like only 1 atom thick, diffusions is almost going to be ballistic through them.
Okay.
Right. And so if you can tune the pore sizes to be really, really precise, then you can get away with extremely short times for diffusion.
Right.
And separation of like these small molecules with polymer membranes tends to be a little bit more challenging, because the polymer trick there is to make the polymer more denser, to get like really sharp cutoffs. So then your permeability suffers, right?
That's
so in terms of diffusive flux, we started out initially playing around with dialysis.
Okay.
Right? That's essentially what we started out with.
Okay.
And then we slowly started. So this was more a demonstration where we basically make whatever pore sizes we want, and then we simply chop off the pore size by picking a sealing agent that basically will keep all the small pores perfectly intact and cut out any of the other larger pores that exist in the material. And so in some sense, it's almost like a reactive separation platform. But one can then think of then using this to do many different separations. So like for example, like I mean, this material is like super stable in harsh environments, right? Harsh environments.
Really?
I mean organics. I mean
Acidic,
yeah,
like
acidic.
varying pH. What about
Yeah.
how stable is it in pressure? Like, what about radiant? Well, you talked about hydrogen and deuterium, right? Or water and deuterium. Is it stable in a radiation environment like that, environment where the radiation is high, or can it be?
So radiation, as long as you're not like irradiating it so much that you start kicking out atoms itself,
Yep.
should be okay.
What about in like, well, I mean, in nuclear power plants, you don't always have a lot of radiation, but sometimes you do high temperature,
Right.
and stuff like it. And I guess it depends on the fluid moving. If you have an aggressive fluid in moving, sometimes the heat transfer fluids can be aggressive. How stable are these materials in that kind of an environment?
So I would say graphene maybe not the most stable material out there, but hexagonal boron nitride would be perfectly okay.
Okay.
Like HBN would be the one to then opt for in those kind of separations.
So when you look at like, and there's the whole thing is that, I mean, NAWI's not going to, there's no way that $100 million can make the kind of impact that you want to have. It's just not enough money for a hub like that, right? So what are the other opportunities for looking at this stuff? Are you primarily funded through NSF, or do you do stuff
so
through DOE
right
yet?
now I'm funded through NSF. So they were super nice. Well, at least let's say we've been having a little bit of good luck with them. So NSF for the career award for proton transport, looking at proton transport membranes, and then
You got an
DOE,
early career award. You have an early career award for that?
Yes.
Oh, congratulations! That's great.
Thank you.
Man.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are hard to get.
Yeah. And then the DOE program is the nuclear physics program. They were
science.
so this was part of a collaborative effort between us, Savannah River, and Clemson. And so Savannah River was leading it, and Clemson and us are like part of the team.
Okay.
Because they bring capabilities that we just cannot do at the universities, right? I mean, they can do the third isotope here that we just cannot work with. So they can do tritium, and then so between the team we have all of the expertise available to like really push this technology further, because I think the DOE is really interested in setting up a separation process so they can bring, or they can keep the supply of available deuterium at the stock levels that they need.
Okay. And when you said you've been worked at the CNMS, is it doing this kind of work with these nanomaterials that you have? Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't follow the questions.
Also, I was saying, when you were working at the CNMS at Oak Ridge, right? Was it on this kind of work as well, looking at these materials, or was it a different part of your group?
Yeah, so I mean, it was primarily work like this. Like, I mean, they have like some really neat STM and STEM imaging facilities. We kind of really use their imaging expertise, because I mean, they have like the best microscopes I've come across. So, and also like the staff scientists there are just outstanding. Like, I mean, absolutely outstanding folks. Like,
it's always good to hear good national lab people helping out. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? And I'm at NREL, right, which is we're so out in Colorado, but yeah, I mean, when you can establish a good relationship with the national lab, and they seem to be operating in that, like, your early, like NSF Office of Science stuff tends to be earlier stage, right? I tend, like, I'm gonna ask you a question like I did, you know, what would you actually put this into operation? How could you manufacturize it, right? So you can see the difference in scale that we talk about and how this stuff works. This stuff that you're talking about is not, it's in the area that NAWI could be interested in. Again, it's finding the right connection though. And we've done some precision separation calls where I think this would be most appropriate. But again, you know, it's hard to say.
Right. I mean, there's some things that we're looking into, like, for example, like you were just mentioning, right? I mean, the brine stuff, if we can figure out a way to extract valuable minerals from brine, then I think we have an interesting case here.
I think that's probably like, and you talk about that again, you're looking at something that's precise, right?
Right.
And you can pick and choose what you want to have go through one of these nanomaterials that you have.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. I mean, we are challenged as a country with supply chains for critical materials. We just are, right? So what other resources do you have to get them? And I think that I think you'll see opportunities in that space come out. You know, there's this Critical Materials Institute, and they've been less focused on, they've been a little focused on replacement, like using other materials instead of traditional critical elements, right? Some stuff around separation, some of the separation stuff came out more recently. And I think there's going to be work there because it's an identified national challenge. So where does that work come from? Is it Office of Science? Is it NSF? Is it like later stage work like that comes out of EERE? Maybe a little bit of everything, I think, because that's the only way you address something that's that big. Right. Are you familiar with the Critical Materials Institute at all at Ames National Lab?
No, I'm not. Maybe I should look these up. Yeah.
I just look it up. And I mean, and I only bring it up because it's what right now is going on in critical materials research. It's a hub like NAWI, right? Okay. And to look at what their work is in the separation space, I know that so there's a researcher at Oak Ridge National Lab, Bruce Moyer, okay, he's a research fellow there. So he was part of the NAWI team for a while. He is the one who kind of focused on these precise separations that you and I are talking about. He's been in separations for a long time, and might be another resource to kind of talk to about some of the work that you're doing.
Sure. Do you mind if I just make a note of these things?
Oh God, I don't care about enough. That's why I'm here. I mean, my job is to make sure
I appreciate it. Thanks. I think this is super helpful. Yeah. I mean, this is Bruce. What was his name? Sorry.
Moyer. Moyer. Okay. All right. Okay. So, and the other one at Oak Ridge who can help you too is Yaron Polsky. He's going to be a little later stage than Bruce is, but Bruce was involved from the get-go with the Critical Materials Institute. Okay. And has been involved with that for a long time. He's an expert in separations. All right. And I'm not saying membrane separations or anything else. I'm just saying separations. Sure. And it's a very interesting perspective on it. And because you've worked at Oak Ridge, they might be some resources that could help you out.
Sure. All
right. Or develop some kind of joint appointment, stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And then this Ames facility was like Critical
Materials Institute.
Okay.
All right. And it's and it'll be on, if you can't find it through Ames, just type Critical Materials into Google, you'll find it. Critical Materials Institute, CMI. All right.
Got it. Will do.
And that's a place where you could at least kind of read about some of the work that's going on and what they're looking at. And then I guess the other thing is to, follow. And now we have some precision separation projects that will be starting. Okay. And I would kind of just follow some of that, connect with some of those researchers and see where they are. And then, getting back to the beginning of this, which is what's the passion and how do you get that passion to your students? Right. I actually think that that's a great topic to have with Peter. I do. I really think that, you'd find a good connection there. And then there's Chris Harris.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I'm just quiet because I'm just writing now.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. No. I understand. Cool. So.
And then at NREL, are there folks who are looking at proton transport stuff? Because I think these membranes also make pretty interesting proton transport membranes. So we currently have a study coming out where we're basically able to get very high selectivity for just for protons as opposed to other ions. And so we think that'll really help looking at the next generation of like fuel cell technologies or flow batteries, separators,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
I would have to, I mean, like, so my role when I'm not working on NAWI is I run our advanced manufacturing office program at NREL. Okay, so
Okay.
that's why I know a fair amount about the
Okay.
about the critical materials things and stuff of that type.
Right.
I mean, we have some folks who are working on separations for brines as well. What I would need to look at is who would be the right other people for you to talk to for these other spaces, because it's just not something that I know, but that doesn't mean it's not going on at the lab.
Right.
And you know, if you send me a little bit of a summary about what you guys are looking for, then I can kind of throw it out, understanding that you're kind of at the NSF scale of things where, you know, more early stage. We have a group at NREL that focuses on more early stage stuff, office of science type work, like you're talking about with Savannah River.
Yeah.
And that would be a good way to connect that in that direction. And honestly, Piran, you know, when you connect with Chris, he's recently been at NREL's, like, should say, he was at NREL before he went to Vanderbilt. So I think it's close enough that he might even know from his background who was doing that kind of stuff that you were thinking about at NREL.
Okay. I will reach out to him right away.
Yeah. So, so anyways, well, this has been a good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate this. I think you've been extraordinarily kind and very generous with your time. I appreciate it a lot.
I haven't, all I've been doing all day is going on my phone, because when you run a meeting, I mean, you know how it is. You don't actually get to listen, right? So it's good to finally have a discussion with somebody about stuff. You know, NAWI's a good community. Keep engaged and find the right people to connect with, and you know, hopefully we can you know, help you kind of develop your program and advance the technology that they're interested in. Okay.
Sure. No, I appreciate this. This is great. Thank you so much.
All right, man. I'm gonna go. We've got 15 minutes till we get back on.
Sure
and follow up with me. You've got my email address.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
there.
I will.
All right.
All right.
Cool, Piran.
Care.
Good chatting with you, man. Take care.
Likewise. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, no problem, Brittany. Take care.
You too.